Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from, and welcome to the latest Hear from the Experts webinar. This series is helping people better understand multiple sclerosis. It highlights MS-related resources, plus provides tools and tips to navigate their MS journey with more knowledge and confidence. Our intention is to help you learn more about the disease, treatments, research, wellness strategies, our programs, and much more. My name's Gabrielle Vito, and it's my privilege to be your moderator for today's broadcast. I'm a longtime volunteer with the MS Society of Canada and an MS ambassador. I'm coming to you today from the west coast of Canada on beautiful Vancouver Island in British Columbia. Now, before we get started with today's presentation, let's briefly go over a couple of housekeeping items. Your microphones have been muted and will remain muted for the entirety of today's presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available soon on our website in English. We are also adding French subtitles to the recording, but that version won't be available for several weeks. The recordings will be available on our website under Nationwide Webinars from the archived page and on our YouTube channel. Now, if you have a question for today's presenter, please type it into the chat box on the right of your screen. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible following the formal presentation, although we have received some pre-submitted questions to help us get started. Now, this session is also being broadcast on Facebook Live today, and we welcome that audience to also type any questions you have into the chat box. Please note that questions pertaining to specific personal situations likely cannot be answered in this type of a venue. We recommend contacting your personal MS healthcare team or perhaps contacting the MS Knowledge Network for those questions. Now, speaking of the MS Knowledge Network, we have staff, including an MS Navigator, monitoring the chats, and they will share additional information when able. Please also note that the MS Society of Canada, as always, does not approve, endorse, or recommend any specific product, therapy, or service, but provides information to assist individuals in making their own health and wellness decisions. Now, this is the second caregiver webinar this year that has been made possible by a generous gift from Rexall. They've helped to establish the Rexall Care Network Caregiver Program at the MS Society of Canada. At some point in their lives, nearly half of Canadians aged 15 and older, or more than 13 million people, have provided care to a family member or a friend living with long-term health conditions, disabilities, or aging needs. Some may not call themselves caregivers because they don't like that label, but they are still acting as a care partner. Caregivers perform a huge range of tasks when supporting and caring for their family members or friends. These can include providing transportation, helping with housework or home maintenance, yard work, scheduling and coordinating appointments, managing finances, helping with medical treatments, and of course, providing personal care. So you can see the list is a long one. Their roles may be complex, and over 60% of caregivers are working at competing demands, with over 2/3 of them employed. So they're trying to juggle jobs at the same time. Caregivers are real-life heroes. They're also essential to the wellness and health of people living with MS. Keeping these care partners healthy, both physically and mentally, is critical. The MS Society of Canada is committed to supporting all people affected by MS, including caregivers. We want to support MS caregivers by giving them wellness tools and opportunities for connections, which includes educational webinars like this one, printed resources, support groups, and the one-to-one peer support program. And with Rexall's help, we'll continue to develop educational options and wellness connections for caregivers. On behalf of families affected by MS across Canada, we thank Rexall for helping to provide meaningful support for MS caregivers. Today's presenter is Donna Thompson. Donna Thompson is a caregiver, author, and course facilitator. Her caregiving experience was shaped by caring for her son, who has severe disabilities, and for her mother, who lived with dementia. Donna is the co-author with Dr. Zachary White of The Unexpected Journey of Caring, The Transformation of Loved One to Caregiver, and author of The Four Walls of My Freedom, Lessons I've Learned from a Life of Caregiving. She is a co-designer and co-instructor of the Family Engagement in Research course and the facilitator of the Caregiving Essentials course, both of these at McMaster University. Donna blogs regularly at the Caregiver's Living Room. Welcome, Donna. Thank you for being here. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Gab. I'm just delighted to be here. Today we're going to be talking about self-care that is not a bubble bath. And how did I come up with that title? I think I just got really annoyed or impatient with seeing so many articles online for family caregivers that said, just take a bubble bath, just get respite, just, take a break and stop complaining that you're so tired, because clearly you're not doing self-care properly if you're exhausted and feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So I thought that that's just bad messaging. And I wanted to come today with some thoughts that are a little bit more grounded in the reality in which we live, when we're really spending a lot of time and energy helping someone we love get through the day in the way that they want to get through the day, especially in the context of family, work, and so many competing demands. So, the barriers to self-care, caring for ourselves and making sure that we have the energy that we need and the optimism that we need to keep going and be the best we can be in this role, the barriers are very real. Often we might think that the person we're taking care of with MS is just, their needs are greater and worthier than, my own or your own. And this idea that, here, I'll get you whatever you need and I'll get what I need later. And that's a thought that we could have in our mind in a moment, or we could say, well, I'll resume my life when all of this is over. The fact is that we live our lives now, here, now. So we need to build in self-care somehow to the moments and the hours and the days and weeks of our life now. So this other idea that can be so kind of soul destroying is that self-care is actually selfish. And I think that we're hardwired in our society today to be quite nervous or worried when we do pause to do something special for ourselves, particularly if there's someone with care needs in the house. I mean, think of the last time you bought something for yourself that was not absolutely necessary. I mean, did you feel good about that? Or did you feel like a little guilty? So those kind of gremlins on the shoulder whispering these messages into your head is what I'm talking about here. And, that self-care is just one more thing I don't have time for. And this is the idea where you kind of get annoyed with a lot of the messaging saying, here's something you really should be doing. Like, it's another thing you should be doing. And if you're tired, you're just not doing it correctly. That's it. And especially these thoughts in your head that are very negative and very self-defeating can be real barriers to enabling you to seek and take advantage of any opportunities for self-care that may exist, that do exist in your life. So what are some opposite messages that could be thoughts in your head that open up possibility of self-care. And we don't know yet, what that looks like. We're not talking about an idea that there is a recipe to follow for self-care. There isn't. It's going to be different for everybody. But these are some ideas, these are some mantras in your head that you can tell yourself that my role is to both give and receive care. And it's interesting to think as a caregiver about how you receive care yourself from the person with MS you're caring for. How do you receive care from your friends, your children, your spouse, your whomever it is in your life, in your closest circle, who do not have a diagnosis of MS? Those who do and those who don't are likely both caring for you in some way, shape, or form. Care is never just one way. And that I can generate personal happiness through slivers of gratitude. If you do a Google search for the science of happiness, gratitude is the first thing that comes up. There is so much scientific evidence to show that if we practice gratitude even a tiny bit in our lives, it increases our sense of well-being. So practicing gratitude in itself for anything, for the sun coming out, for the autumn leaves, for food in the fridge, a hug, anything that happens to be good in your life, you pause for a moment and take a sliver of time for a moment of gratitude. And that is shown to increase well-being. And, this idea that I understand that care is best delivered as a team, and I am the team manager. Managing care is as valuable and as worthy as giving that care. So ensuring that, the job gets done and that it gets done very, very well is as good. We don't have to do everything all by ourselves. We would never go to work and expect to do every single job there is to do to run a business. We would never do that. But for some reason, we do tell ourselves that we should be doing everything as a family caregiver. And that's going to make self-care very, very, very difficult. And that I pay attention to my emotions, and sometimes I feel better after a good cry. In the caregiving journey, particularly in the context of MS or any other progressive disease, there is loss and there is grief. And sometimes we share that with the person we're caring for. Sometimes we absorb it. And sometimes we experience those emotions alone. But in order to move forward, you have to go through those emotions. You can't go around them and say, I'm fine, when you're not. So experiencing and claiming and enabling yourself to cry, to feel anger, a sense of gigantic unfairness, just sadness, deep sadness. These are all appropriate to what's going on. And it's deeply human to feel these things, as deeply human as it is to wipe your tears and have a good laugh at some dark humor thing right after. And to tell yourself that my work is valuable and important, because it is. It is, caregiving is the work that makes all other work possible. It is It is very valuable. Um, and sometimes, the self-care can begin in a kind of personal science. This idea of self-awareness. How do I feel right now? And there's actually a previous NASA scientist in Silicon Valley in the States. He got out of that business, and when he became a family caregiver himself, and his name is Rajiv Mehta, and he started something called Atlas of Caregiving, and you can Google it, atlasofcaregiving.com. And he is the guru of caregiver personal science. So he developed something called care mapping. He also, though, developed a whole bunch of tools to help us notice in ourselves when we're thirsty, when we're hungry, or am I cold? Do I have an ache at the back of my neck? How do I really feel? Some people might call this mindfulness. It is personal science with a purpose, because what it is seeking opportunities to care for yourself by noticing what you need. And I mentioned before, this idea of slivers of time. We can't, I don't know very many people who could get away for a week of respite, let alone, a couple of weeks or even a weekend. Sometimes it's impossible to get away for the day. And so I want to propose that if you think about your life as it is, your daily life as it is, without making some gigantic change to it to leave home and go to Bali or something, what is a sliver of time that you could take in your day that may be a couple of times a week, or it may be once a day, or it may be a couple of times a day? I was on a call with a group of caregivers, spousal caregivers, and one of the ladies on the call said, I want to tell you what I do to get a sliver of time that's just for me, that I can say, oh, thank you, I got my little break. And she said when her husband goes to the bathroom, she takes her break and does Sudoku, which she loves to do. But she thought, oh, I never have time to pick up my Sudoku and do it because I'm always too busy doing other things. But she decided to take that little sliver of time when her husband happened to be in the bathroom, and she did Sudoku during that time. So, I mean, that's several times a day. And it's only about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes maybe, but that is what she did during those slivers of time. So I think it just requires determination and a sense of possibility to locate these slivers of time in your day and figure out what you want to do with them. And I would say that scrolling on your device probably isn't the most gratifying activity. It's very one way. It's very just observational rather than engaging. But try to think of something that really does give you comfort. And it may be sewing, it may be knitting, some kind of a craft, or it could be like doing a puzzle. I love doing puzzles. I get really relaxed when I do them. So, and, reframing waiting, I think this is a very interesting idea. An awful lot of what we do is wait. And and we're waiting for a phone call. We're waiting in the hospital for a test. We're waiting at a red light when we're driving. This idea of reframing waiting to be some form of self-care. What could waiting be instead of just feeling annoyed that the light's taking too long, feeling bored that you're not somewhere else doing something else when you're in the hospital waiting room? I wonder if there's something. Now, for me, when I decided to practice reframing waiting myself, I decided I was going to do it with music. So I love music, but I never got organized like with a playlist or anything. And I'm so old fashioned. I'm not very good with my phone, but my daughter helped me with this. So sometimes you need to get somebody to help you figure out, okay, how can I put together my love of music with my reframing of waiting? What can I do here with accessing something that I love easily that is going to transport me and help me feel relaxed, help me feel a sense of well-being in a few minutes of just waiting? So it's going to be very individual, but I propose it as a possibility. And yeah, here we are, gratitude. I have a friend called Julie Keon, who is a life cycle celebrant. She is a grief counselor at a hospice. She is one of these people who knows how to care for people, and she knows how to comfort people. And she does this in a wide variety of ways. But here she has made a tea bag, and it has a message in it. And it says, the process of grieving leads you eventually to a deep place of gratitude. And it's what I mentioned before. I think we need to go through this emotion, the grieving, and we need to, as Julie says, sometimes invite sadness in for tea and sit with it. And here is the tea bag. But it's also interesting in the sense that it is like a cleansing. And we need to, there's nothing worse than saying, I'm fine when I'm not. In fact, in my blog, The Caregiver's Living Room, I've had a blog for like, I don't know, maybe 14 years or something. And way by far, the most popular blog post ever of all time on my site is one that's titled, Saying I'm Fine When I'm Not. So I think because everybody recognizes this who's in caregiving, and the masks that we have to wear of, oh yeah, fine, good. And it's not all the time in anyone's life. So I think it is very healthy, and it is actually a form of self-care to take a break when you can, maybe even use a sliver of time. Just think to yourself, I'm sad. I'm sad. I feel so sad today. Something has made me feel this way, has triggered this feeling in me today. And feel it, then move on and through your day. But you will be renewed just by this acknowledgement. And I think I've spoken, about the role of grief. And this picture, these are caregivers in a grief circle. And sometimes sharing those feelings, as you know, if you're in a caregiver support group, or you have used the Navigator supports through the MS Society, or you have spoken to other MS caregivers, you'll know that sharing these emotions is powerful medicine. It's validating. Also, we learn from each other how to move on from the emotional moment, pick ourselves up and keep going, which we must do. And in fact, we must pick ourselves up with renewed energy after acknowledging and experiencing the grief emotions. Ritual is also, an interesting thing to think about. In caregiving, we don't have rituals. If you think about the marriage ceremony, baptism, graduation, bar mitzvah, we don't have any ceremonies that mark the beginning or the end of caregiving or anything for us. So this idea of creating a ritual for yourself. Now, this is a picture of a worry ritual. And the ritual is that you have a bowl of water by your front door, maybe, or on your kitchen counter. And every time you worry, you have a worry about something, you take a bit of salt or sugar and you put it into the water where it will dissolve. At the end of the day, all of the salt or sugar has dissolved in the water, and you take your bowl of water and you bring it outside and you pour it onto the ground where it will go into nature and water whatever's growing out there. And you start and do that again the next day. And this act of dispensing with your worries, having them melt away, it seems simple, but I encourage you to try it because it's a powerful ritual. And, the difference between ritual and ceremony, they can look alike, but ceremony is something that is a one-off. And again, I think it's interesting if you sit in a group of caregivers, as I did a couple of months ago, and I said, who here practices any ceremony? Can you remember practicing a ceremony, just even by yourself or with a friend or a member of your family? Have you done anything to mark something that felt important to you? And one of the caregivers there said she wanted to make a little ceremony for a pot of flowers that she had grown on her windowsill. And when the flowers bloomed in her pot, she decided to paint the pot and decorate it. So we talked in the group about how this ceremony was some way of essentially saying, I'm here, I did something that I love, I planted these flowers. Now I want to celebrate that I planted these flowers. I want some way to demonstrate to myself and to anybody else who comes by this windowsill that this is something important to me. It seems simple, but these are things that are missing from our caregiving lives, and we have to find ways to create them ourselves because there is no graduation ceremony. There isn't, a coming of age or a coming out or any demonstration that you're doing this job well. And so this is a mandala, this picture. And it's actually a mandala that I helped to make. It was a girlfriend group, and one of our friends died very suddenly and unexpectedly. And we came together in the park and we went for a walk. Some people brought, one of the people brought the flower, the sunflower in the middle. But the other items, we just found them in the park, in the woods. And we made this decoration for our friend together. And we held hands and we looked at it. We thought about our friend. And then we left and we thought, other people who come through the park are going to see this and they're going to know it's special. They're going to know there's something sacred about it. And then eventually it'll blow away and it'll go back into the earth. So for all of us together that day, thinking about our friend, celebrating our friend, you know, how you get together and you think, what can we do? What can we do? Well, this is what we did. And it's beautiful, I think. So saying that this kind of thing is accessible to us all, individually and as a group of people. Particularly, I'm thinking, you know, people who share the experience of caring for somebody they love who has a diagnosis of MS. And the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is something that I discovered called metta. Metta is a Buddhist idea, and I'm not sure if you can read this, but the metta meditation is on, it's a meditation on loving kindness. And it reads as follows: may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be happy and healthy. May I feel connected and calm. May I be free from suffering. May I live in peace. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be happy and healthy. May you feel connected and calm. May you be free from suffering. May you live in peace. And this is an easy little, I'll call it a prayer. It's an intention, really, for loving kindness to grow and fill you up. And then for that intention of loving kindness to be directed towards somebody you're caring for, and then others in your family, and then to the world. You know, it's just so easy to go through a caring day, week, months, years, almost stuck in with your head down, not noticing that you're thirsty, not noticing that you're cold. You know, I'll make, and this is the title of this talk, the 2 cups of tea. You know, I'll make you a cup of tea and I'll have mine later. You know, no, make 2 cups of tea. If your loved one says, I'm cold, or you notice they look cold, ask yourself, do I feel cold too? I'm going to get 2 sweaters here, or I'm going to cuddle up under a blanket together with my loved one. And so all of these ideas about noticing, about gratitude, about pausing and appreciating, and even about feeling, you know, emotions of sadness, grief, loss, all of those things are part of our caring lives. And often we don't stop to pay attention to them and to act on them. So I hope, you know, today you're going to glimpse a possibility of taking these slivers of time and doing something different with them that is for yourself. In the practice of metta, the here's some ways to actually practice this beautiful prayer or this beautiful intention. You can just Google metta, loving kindness, after this presentation, and you'll find there's lots on metta. But this is the way you actually do it. So you bring your attention to the person you love. You silently send them the same affirmations that were in the previous slide. And you bring your attention to someone you have difficulty with. So someone who might be a thorn in your side, someone you're angry with or resentful towards. And you silently send them the affirmations. What you're trying to do is detoxify your head and your emotions here. Be filled with loving kindness and energy. And if you have resistance to that, notice it with compassion. Have compassion for yourself. I remember when I was in a very dark place, our son had just gone on to palliative care, and we didn't think that he was going to survive very long. As a matter of fact, he did, but he was very sick then. And I read an article about a woman who had cancer, terminal cancer, and she was going to die and leave behind two very small children. And she felt terrible guilt about abandoning her babies because she was dying. And her best friend said to her, don't kick the baby. And the baby is you. And I don't know, for some reason, I always remembered that. And I thought, when I'm hard on myself, I think, don't kick the baby. Don't kick the baby. Because I am vulnerable. I'm soft. I'm raw. All of those things. And don't kick the baby. So if you have trouble forgiving someone, for example, sending loving kindness to them, be compassionate towards yourself. Because, oh my gosh, aren't we all dealing with so much difficult stuff that nobody ever prepared us for? And, and then the idea of bringing your attention to all beings everywhere and sending out all of the love in your heart to the whole wide world. This has the net effect of helping us feel part of the world instead of apart from it. It makes us feel part of all of life. And if there's anything we feel as caregivers, many times it's extremely lonely. And this is a little exercise that can help us deal with that. And then let go of the affirmations and place attention in your own heart. And for a few minutes, just breathe, relax, and observe the effects of the meditation. So again, coming back to this idea of noticing yourself. Notice, how do I feel? How do I feel physically? How do I feel emotionally? Notice about my breathing. Notice the tension in my shoulders. I always get that here. And so this is a good practice, I think, to help us in many ways, many different ways, achieve the benefits of a practice of self-care. And another tool that I wanted to bring to your attention, just on a very practical level, is something called the F words for living. And the F words are function, family, fitness, fun, friends, and future. And these are actually the World Health Organization domains of living well, of human functioning. We all need to fill up our goals, objectives, and activities in these domains of human life. So function would be what you do every day. It might be your work. It might be your caring. Family is self-explanatory. What do you really care about your family? Like maybe family to you would be seeing grandchildren. You want to prioritize elements within the family, and these relate to self-care. So fitness, it might be important to you to go to a Zumba class or to go for a walk. And if that's what's important to you in fitness, write it down in that square. Fun. What do you do for fun? Maybe it's just that Sudoku. It could be something small, but if you're wanting to give it priority, write it down. And then friends and future. What do I want to begin to plan for? This could even be next week, or maybe you are planning to go like on a cruise or something. Maybe you have a big plan and a little plan, but this is a way that you can write down your priorities and show them on this piece of paper to the person you're caring for, to the rest of the family, to the clinical team, to the MS navigator, and say, what I want is help to achieve my goals in the F words. And if I can get some of these things, my life will be better. And I need help and support to get these things. But these are the things that matter to me. And you can ask the person you're caring for to fill out one of these for him or herself too. It's an opportunity to talk about what really matters to us and how can we help each other get those things. And here, if you just want to take a screenshot of this, 50 ways to take a little tiny break. Turn on the music and dance, Google, YouTube, jokes. I don't know. It's going to be up to you, but I think you could be creative. And this is a lovely little image of some great ideas of how to take care of yourself in tiny pieces. So that is my presentation today, and I would just love to take some questions now.
Donna, thank you so much for that presentation. It was heartfelt and honest and really informative, so we thank you for that. So getting right to the questions we've got, we have had a few come in as well as our pre-submitted ones. So
Good.
First and foremost, what are some tips for caring for my elderly father while dealing with my own MS symptoms and treatments?
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a situation that's incredibly common. People are expected to care for aging parents when they are faced with a serious diagnosis of their own. I think it's very challenging, and you do want to be super compassionate with yourself. I think the first thing that I would advise is something that I tricked on myself. I just decided to do it because I was feeling the same way, trying to care for too many people in my family at the same time, and I just couldn't do it. So I sat down, and this is in the context of my mom. I wrote a list of all the things that I could and wanted to do for my mom. And then I wrote a list, which wasn't a comprehensive list, but I wrote a list of all the things that I knew she needed that I couldn't do. So at least I had a roadmap, a place to begin to say, okay, so I'm not saying that I don't want to care for my father, or in my case, my mom. I want to care for her, but I can't do everything. So this is what I can do, and this is what he needs that I cannot do. So that's at least a good place to start, because a lot of times when we get into the worst kind of trouble in our families is when we don't know um, how to answer the question, what do you need? What would be helpful? Like, I remember saying, I don't know, I need everything. Like, it's hard to know exactly that I need a cleaning lady on Thursdays. I need somebody to walk the dog when my dad's in the hospital. Like, how do you know these things? And I think the thing is, to deal with the guilt that we can't be all things to all people, making a list of what you can do is a helpful place to start. And
Excellent.
there will be things, as a person with an MS diagnosis, there may be many things you just cannot do that somebody else needs to do for your dad. And that has to be okay.
Well, that leads us right into my next set of questions, Donna. I was going to combine a few here, one being exactly what you've just talked about, guilt, caregivers overcoming guilt, burnout, and patience, finding patience, overcoming guilt, and avoiding that burnout. You've touched on all of them, but those are three questions we have had come in about dealing with all three of those issues.
Yeah. Um, I'll begin sort of with patience, because I was thinking about that, because I was talking to my sister about that just this week. And we were talking about just this idea that it relates to patience, but it's getting very flustered in a medical emergency or when something really goes wrong. And how do you deal with that? I think it's related to being patient and not losing your temper too. And it reminded me of something I heard on CBC Ideas show on the radio a couple years ago. And this fellow was talking on the radio. His name is Caleb Musgrave. And he's an Indigenous wilderness guide for company executives who want to go out in the woods and get lost and then learn about team building. And he does this very high level stuff. But he also does wilderness survival. It's about surviving in the wilderness, which I thought, oh, that sounds like caregiving. So what he said is he uses a system called STOP, where if you feel like you're going to lose your temper, lose your sense of calm in a situation in which you feel lost and confused, he practices something called STOP. And it's stop, think, observe, plan. And the stop part of it is, he said, the main thing is to breathe. Take some deep breaths, which will help to calm you down. Have some water. He talks a lot about we may be dehydrated, and water is just a really, really important thing to do in that moment. Helps to breathe and drink water. That's what he said in that stop part. Then think. Identify the problem. State the problem. Think. And then observe. And that's where you are calm enough to look around and say, okay, what do I see? What do I see here? And that also could be observing something that just happened and remembering it, if that's what upset you. So you just want to be sort of like stepping back and looking at yourself and just in that dispassionate moment of self awareness and observation. Then you plan. You plan what you're going to do with the circumstances and the feelings, if it's a question of losing patience. And what can I do? And it may be, in the case of patience, that you have to walk out of the room for 30 seconds and give yourself that space and time. But that would be in the planning stage, so that you can regain a sense of control in the moment. About the feeling of guilt, I think we all labor under the false belief that if we love our person enough, we will be able to do everything for them that they need by ourselves. And that if we don't do that, if we share the burden of care, if we put our hand up and call ourselves that caregiver word, if we ask for help, that we are betraying the love and loyalty in that relationship. And, I think if you ask anybody who has been burnt out as a caregiver, like once they've on the other side looking back, they'll say, that's not a betrayal. That is a loving, responsible act to try to get a team together. That's where everyone has a piece of responsibility for keeping a loved one as well as they can be through the course of a disease progression.
Yeah, you are such a great resource, Donna. Again, you've led right into the next question I had here that is about disease progression. This one comes from a healthcare practitioner. At what point in the disease process, they're asking, do you feel we should start discussing caregiver support?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very interesting question coming from a provider. I think, first of all, I would say I would want to ask a person, when do you feel you would like to begin discussing caregiver support? And then I might say, on the whole, just like wills and financial planning for aging, it's better to do it before you need it. It's better to do it sooner than later. But, the other thing I think is that it's very, very enlightening for caregivers to talk to each other, particularly sort of newbie with somebody who's been down this path a lot longer, and say, what were the deal breakers? When did you really need caregiver support? And an awful lot of people that I know will say it was when there was a loss of mobility, or it was with incontinence. There's certain elements of the disease progression that are big sort of cliffs that you have to climb down or jump off, but it's a big shift from what used to be. And I think the MS Navigator and the peer support that's available in the society is so helpful in this regard, because the clinician can tell you should tell you, what is my MS gonna look like in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. People know the disease progression and what it's going to be. I mean, everybody's, of course, is different, but fundamentally there are some through lines that are common to the disease. And so that you can say, okay, like at that point, I know I think I'm going to have trouble with that because I can't get my head around this even now. So even if I deal with it at the time just fine, I'm going to say now, I want support there in case I need it because I'm having trouble with the idea of losing mobility, you know? And so I think,
Really good advice.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are almost out of time, so I'm going to end it there for the questions. I want to thank you again so much for your expertise and your time and everything you've donated to us today. I'm going to go now into our wrap up to give folks, we referred to some of these resources, but we're going to put them up on the screen now for people to see. So we're going to remind everybody about our MS Knowledge Network. This is staffed by trained navigators who provide consistent, quality information and support. You can connect to them by phone, email, or live chat through the MS Society website. We know that their interactions and information is trustworthy. Navigators can help you learn more about the programming and resources we offer here at the MS Society to support individuals and their families affected by MS. For more information and support, reach out to the MS Knowledge Network. Now, if you'd like to sign up for our monthly e-newsletters, MS Navigators can help you do that as well. When you receive e-news, that means you're kept up to date on the latest MS research and treatments, societies, programs, and services. That's all can be delivered to your email inbox each and every month. Now, we also invite you to be a part of the MS community. We encourage you to get involved with our programs, services, events, government relations, and volunteer opportunities. These days, connecting with each other is more important than ever, and information is available on our website, and that, of course, is www.mssociety.ca. Volunteers are an essential part of everything we do for Canadians affected by MS. And right now, demand for that program we've been talking about, our one-to-one peer support program and our peer support groups, is growing. And we need more volunteers to reach as many people affected by MS as possible. So if you're interested in getting involved, please reach out. Again, there's various ways you can do that. Navigators can help you do that, or you can reach out directly to volunteer@mssociety.ca. We know it can make a difference to see yourself in the stories we share about life with MS, so we're looking for stories of caregivers across the country to acknowledge the support they provide. Having honest conversations like we've had today about the challenges and joys that come along with caring for someone with MS. We hope to share these stories in a variety of perspectives. So that email is there on your screen now, education@mssociety.ca. If you're interested in getting involved with this project, please do get in touch with us. If you have any questions or need support for this webinar or any of our education activities, that same email address is the one to go to, education@mssociety.ca. We so appreciate all your support and we appreciate your feedback. You soon will be getting a survey by email about today's webinar. We encourage you to fill it out. The Facebook Live audience, the link to the survey is already available at the top of the chat. We'd ask all viewers to complete this survey because the information collected really helps us to know if today's discussion was valuable to you and what topics you'd like to see covered in the future. It'll only take a couple of minutes and your feedback will go a long way to helping us plan future sessions. So on behalf of the MS Society of Canada, I want to thank you all for tuning in to today's broadcast. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.